Some consider it the quietest room on the planet, and it just happens to be in Minneapolis.
But that's not all the room and its building are known for. In this week's Finding Minnesota, John Lauritsen shows us why silence is golden at Orfield Laboratories.
Prince started his career here. The very first recordings he ever did were a set of recordings here.
This inconspicuous little building on East 25th Street was once a famous studio called Sound 80.
Tangled up in blue.
Bob Dylan even recorded part of his Blood on the Tracks album here.
And he had his brother go out and pick up a scratch band from Minneapolis. So many of the guys on the real recording are Minneapolis guys rather than New York musicians.
But in one of those ironic life twists, the building went from a place of music and sound to housing one of the quietest rooms on the planet.
So we got this, and I was delighted with it. My employees thought I was crazy to buy it.
Steve Orfield is president of Orfield Laboratories. 30 years ago, he acquired what's called an anechoic chamber. It took about a year to build this entire room, and much of the work involved installing these acoustic wedges. The chamber absorbs sound, so much so that if you stand in here long enough and you're quiet enough, you'll start to hear your internal organs working.
You can hear your joints scratching against each other. You can hear your heartbeat quite clearly. And if your hearing is very sensitive, you can hear your lungs flowing.
Airplane cables, each of which hold 1,500 pounds of weight, help keep things quiet while putting a bounce in your step. But there is an advantage to having a chamber that registers at negative 24 decibels.
So we can test products that nobody in the United States can test because of that. So we've measured, for example, the switches on the dashboard of a car. We've measured hearing aids because Minneapolis is the world headquarters of the hearing aid industry.
It's the science of silence. The laboratory also has a chamber that's the exact opposite.
This is a room that not a lot of people experience.
That's because it's hard to have a conversation. Mike Rowley calls this one the 5-second reverberation chamber.
Meaning that it takes sound about 5 seconds to decay 60 decibels.
Here, the sound power of different materials are tested. This is one of your tools, then?
Yes. So when we're measuring impact on floor ceilings, or what kind of footfall noise gets to the room down below.
The noise is enough to drive you back to a quieter place.
Yeah, many people have come in here to meditate.
Especially if they're escaping chaos. You're slowly helping parents of young children regain their sanity is what you're doing here, Steve.
Let's hope
That's
so.
really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I just love to solve problems. And the more complex the problem, the more interesting it is to me.
In Minneapolis, John Lauritsen, WCCO News.
Steve told John that they hope to become a nonprofit in the future, and they are working on studies that could impact those with autism, dementia, and PTSD. You can learn more about visiting Orfield Laboratories on WCCO.com.